Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Thrivalist Manifesto with Ben V and Dr. G. This week's podcast I'm super excited about. It's an interview with Danielle Pashko. In the world of natural healthcare and alternative healing arts, there's a great deal of effort made by the practitioner in order to have their client or their patient make all the necessary changes in their life that would be needed to move the needle, so to speak, on their health in a very meaningful way. Whether we're talking about their objective medical tests or we're talking about their subjective experience, preferably both, people seek healthcare and they desire to turn their life around and actually feel like they have restored their health. The practitioner typically has to get involved in one way or another with diet, supplements, exercise, posture, manual therapies, sleep hygiene, relationships, work environments. All of these things are required for people to dramatically improve their health in a natural way. This requires a professional who's either naturally intuitive and in tune with their clients or their patients' needs, or they had to have had some kind of a health crisis of their own in which they use natural means to restore their health. Well, in the case of this week's interview, our guest has both of these qualities. Being both naturally intuitive as well as having her own health challenges to overcome, Danielle is incredibly generous in this interview to go into detail about her personal journey. As someone who's lost her mother to cancer while she was still a child and her mother was in her 30s, Danielle learned a lot about alternative healing from those years while her mother was trying to save her own life and doing research for lifestyle changes that would help to heal herself. But the true mark of a skilled healer is one who can adapt and change based on their clients' or their patients' needs and change with the times, change with the science and the information being presented in front of her. Danielle thought she was doing everything right, and as you can imagine, the shock she may have experienced when she herself was diagnosed with cancer in her 30s. This interview not only tells the remarkable personal story of someone who's been blessed with gifts and cursed with serious challenges, but it also is an interview that goes into detail about what it takes to overcome these challenges. At 5'11", Danielle has the looks and stature of a fit supermodel. Actually, she is one. But this was not always the case. Instead of trying one way and having it not work, Danielle discovered there are many ways to achieve your goals. She's the author of 2 books where she shares all of her experiences and has practiced in 2 of New York City's most famous clinics, providing one-on-one care to very high-profile clientele. Please enjoy, download, subscribe, and share this podcast with your friends, and please tell us what you think. Enjoy.
Welcome to another episode of the Thrivalist Manifesto with Dr. G and Ben V. Today's guest is Danielle Pashko. Danielle and I have been friends and colleagues for over 10 years. We met while she was a practitioner at the Morrison Center here in New York, which is an integrative medical center. And Danielle now is in private practice. Danielle's an author. She's a businesswoman, or business person, shall I say. She is a lecturer, speaker, and we're really, really pumped to tell Danielle's story, to talk about what she's doing. Oh, and she's an author of 2 books. So we're really excited. Thank you for coming, Danielle.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your story and how you went from being a licensed massage therapist to being a RD and nutritionist at a very high-profile practice here in New York.
Okay, well, I started in the natural health world when I was really young. I developed an interest because my mother had breast cancer when she was very young, so she was really into holistic and alternative kind of modalities, macrobiotic diet and visualization, meditation, and I was more into the spiritual side of things. So I actually studied with a healer when I was 18 years old. And then from there, I ended up becoming a Reiki therapist. And then I learned polarity therapy, which is a type of hands-on healing. And then I got my massage license, and I started working at the Peninsula. And I think they added energy healing to the menu because I was doing that.
They were very progressive.
Yeah,
I was familiar with the Peninsula.
It was really cool. So I was loving doing that. And then I ended up studying yoga because I was always very athletic. So yoga seemed to tie into meshing the physical together also with the spiritual part of what I had really enjoyed. And I started teaching yoga for quite a number of years. And I guess the way I transitioned, to be honest with you, was I was in a relationship, I had a short marriage, and I was working a lot. I would travel a lot on the weekends. I'd be out in the Hamptons. I'd kind of be away in places that maybe, don't necessarily feel so good for someone when you're in a relationship with them, and you're like, peace, see you later, I'm like going away for the weekend, and you stay at, a house and whatever. So I wanted to start to do something that didn't require me touching people so much and having so much connection in that way.
That's interesting.
So that's actually when I started to take up my interest in nutrition and study nutrition and move into that rather than doing so much of the hands-on work. I still continue to teach yoga over the years, but I stopped the massage completely.
People don't realize how, I'm sorry, Doc, people don't realize how physical the manual therapy, massage, even energy healing is for the practitioner, and how you have a ceiling. It doesn't matter, male, female. It's like, how many appointments can you do? A, from a physical standpoint, and B, not to sound woo-woo, but energetically just picking all that up from the person that's on the table.
If you're connected, which I definitely was, and you're somewhat of an empath, which many healers are, you do pick up what's going on, and it is draining. I remember in between sessions, I'd require 15 minutes just to be able to meditate and clear myself. And the second I got home, I had to jump in the shower. And it takes a lot from you. And sometimes you pick up even pain from people. I mean, I almost became like a medical intuitive in certain ways. I don't feel like I have those abilities now because I haven't practiced them. But I would pick up people's headaches and stomach aches. Someone had MS and my body started shaking. Like, it was just, I've had weird experiences like that. It was too much. I think you have to know how to ground yourself well. And I was 19, 20 years old at the time. I don't think I had all the skills to be able to handle that. And it wasn't the right thing for me at that time. But yes, it can be very, very draining. It could be rewarding, but also very draining.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
How old were you when your mother was diagnosed with breast cancer, and how old was your mom?
So I was 8, and then she ended up passing away 5 years later when she was 38. She passed away. So it had always been a fear for me, and I think because of witnessing that, my goal in life was always to be really healthy and kind of fight the fight of never having any illness. I almost looked at people who didn't take control of their bodies as a little bit like ignorant in a way. Like, why wouldn't you take care of yourself? This is your body. God forbid you get an illness. Really, take care of it as well as you can.
Yeah, you witnessed the worst possible scenario at a very early age, at a formative age.
So I thought, like, hey, I'm gonna outsmart this.
And your mom was actively pursuing all kinds of ways to get involved in her own care. She wasn't a passive...
No, she was not passive. I mean, she didn't have the healthiest of lifestyles leading up to that. We didn't really have much of an education in knowing how to eat well, or, she didn't really exercise so much. It was like vacuuming around the house to listen to Donna Summers or something. That was like her idea of exercise. She wasn't really...
Sounds like Dr. G.
Right, she wasn't like working out. But
where did you grow up?
I was born here in New York, and then we lived in Florida, and then when I was 13 and she passed away, I moved back to New York with some relatives in Queens, and a little crazy childhood. I bounced around a bit with a couple relatives, and by the time I was 16, I got my own apartment, and I lived on my own, and I moved to the city.
It's amazing.
So, yeah.
We have a little bit of a Queens theme going on.
I knew that was coming. I was waiting for when that was coming.
Where are you from?
I'm from the Bronx. He's from Queens.
The Bronx?
Yes,
Wow.
yes. I'm from...
The boogie down.
I don't think I stepped in Queens until after college. That was like... You may as well have told me to go to Oklahoma.
We tried to keep you out. We tried to keep you out, but...
That's a lie.
So wait, where are you from?
Shea Stadium is not considered the Queens. Right. It's not considered Queens.
Shea Stadium?
Yeah,
it's the Mecca of Queens.
I know, but in my eyes, that was not going to Queens. Right. That was it. In LaGuardia Airport, that was about it.
I'm from Flushing.
Flushing, okay.
Born and raised in Flushing. Flushing, Fresh Meadows, that type of area.
I went to the movie theater by you. Fresh
The
Meadows.
Cinema City?
Yeah, that's like...
Well, there's two. There's Fresh Meadows Movie Theater and Cinema City.
The big one. I don't know.
It had 5... Well, the big one was Fresh Meadow Movie Theater. There were only 2 theaters, but they had the big balcony and all that stuff.
He probably got thrown out a bunch of times from that theater. That's what it was. Yeah, sneaking into extra movies.
You were the guy. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, trying to refill the soda 20 times.
Yeah. Sneaking in, like, between movie, from one to the next.
Exactly. So talk a little bit more about the transition from therapist now to more the biochemical, the nutritional aspect of it. What sparked you aside from the physicality of doing the manual therapy?
Well, I guess the spark is, I think what I was mentioning a little bit is being in a relationship where I didn't want to have so much physical contact with my clients, to be honest.
Right.
But I didn't know if I wanted to be a practitioner, seeing clients in my own practice on my own. So after I finished school, I actually started as a rep. I started working for different nutraceutical companies. For anyone who doesn't know, nutraceutical companies are high-end nutritional companies that are similar to pharmaceuticals, except they're like pharmaceutical-grade nutritional products, and my clients were doctors. So essentially, the things that I worked on were doing a lot of private label, so doctors that helped them create their own product lines or help them custom formulate. So I had, maybe 70 accounts throughout New York, and I'd go in and make relationships, and then I'd get really close to the doctors, and they'd say, why aren't you, you should be in practice in our office. So a couple times I ended up crossing over and actually working for the doctors. I never really saw myself ever being a clinician or anything like that.
Well, you had to know more about nutrition and supplementation than actual practitioners.
A lot of times, yeah, because you would do these lunch and learns with doctors and nutritionists or chiropractors, and you'd be teaching them about it. But I didn't realize how much I would love it once I started doing it myself, and so I just moved into it in a way that was kind of surprising to me, and it just really stuck. And now I feel like when I'm working with clients, it's not so much just focusing on nutrition, but it's really encompassing all the things that I've learned over the years, with the other kind of work that I've done, and I included in my session, because I don't think you can reduce health or being healthy to just, nutrition. I think that's foolish. I think that there's so many different aspects, the way you handle your stress levels, do you have a meditation practice? Are you moving? Are you exercising? What does yoga mean to you? So all these kind of things, even some spiritual things I learned from my mother, I share with my clients. So all of it comes together in a session. So, I can call myself a nutritionist, and people, maybe do come to me for weight loss or one of those issues, but it also can be limiting because I feel like I do so much more.
Right, that's why, hence the wellness. The name of the website for the listeners is Pashko Wellness.
Right.
So it's more comprehensive, all-inclusive, which is exactly the way Dr. G and I look at concussions.
Exactly, and I know that about you from just knowing you over the years and the way that you work, and I'm learning just right now about you too, Dr. G, so it's important to take all that into consideration.
Yeah, we're going to link to your website and all of your books and everything on our website, thethrivalistmanifesto.com, where you can download and subscribe to our podcast, and you can comment on what you think about our podcast.
Review it, share it, post it.
Share, post.
Cool,
whatever you want. Just do it. Just do it.
But now, you went and got more formal education in nutrition.
I actually have my bachelor's in nutrition. When I did that, I wasn't sure I'd actually be practicing. I really wanted to use it for my own education, and I really wanted to be on the more developmental side, product side, and I'm really transparent with my clients. I tell them about my education, but it just sort of took its own form, and now I've been working with clients doing nutrition for about 10 years, but doing these all-encompassing kind of programs. So it's nutrition, it's a little bit of everything that I talked about, a little bit of therapy, and, the life coaching word, I guess people are certified in that.
Oh, yeah,
really
it's like biohacking. It's kind of a misnomer.
But it is a little bit of that, too. So I guess it really depends on the issue and what somebody's coming in for, and sometimes it shapes into its own thing once they come in for a session.
Right,
yeah.
Right, it all evolves.
Right.
And to tell you the truth, for our listeners, the whole RD title is more if you want to work in a hospital setting, and you're required, I think, to have it if you want to work in a hospital setting, which is basically just administering diets that are already existing, if I'm not mistaken. So there's very very little room for critical thinking and creativity when you work in that setting.
It's a little less holistic. I think I take more of a holistic approach when I do work with clients. Not that I'm against taking medication when necessary. I mean, I like the integrative approach where you take from both sides. But I definitely just am very open and very I guess holistic and well-rounded when it comes to working with clients. At least I like to think so.
Yeah, over the last 25 years, I can tell you that the amount of need that the clients and the patients have for somebody who understands what they're going through and has the ability to have empathy about their experience.
Right.
Not so much the academic understanding, but where, what role does nutrition play? What role does do their emotions play? What role does exercise play? And having your level of experience in that is more important than anything else. Do you find that when you're working with your clients that they kind of will dump onto you everything that's going on in their life?
Always.
Yeah.
I mean, people come to me with nutritional issues, but a lot of times, even if it's about weight loss, interestingly, I wrote this book called Breaking Your Fat Girl Habits, and people started coming to me, especially, I used to have more of a mixed clientele, men and women, and then more women started coming to me after this book. But a lot of people who are dealing with binge eating disorder, and that was, was something I was always familiar with, but was never, I would say, a specialty of mine, but something like, it was where, like, the universe threw at me. Like, I was getting people from, I had one that was in Norway, I have, people here in New York, in other states from totally different backgrounds of teenagers to, I have Orthodox Jews with 6 kids, but I was getting this influx of binge eating, and I realized that when you speak to everyone, it's not that they don't know what to do or how to eat or to make good decisions. There's such an emotional aspect to it, and really uncovering that and helping them to get through, a lot of their impulses or why they feel this way or why they're, going through this struggle. So a lot of it has to do with such an emotional component, and it's not just about food. So yes, you have to learn about their life, like where does it stem from, where's the trigger, what's making you upset, why are you doing this to yourself? So, that's one side of it, but also, I have people come in, maybe it's for digestion, and they have stomach aches, or, headaches, and they have, migraines, and you wonder, like, what kind of tension is triggering this? Do you notice that when you are feeling, it coming on the worst? Does something especially stressful trigger this situation? Does it happen, when are you in a relationship that you maybe want to get out of, and when you're fighting with your husband or your spouse or whoever it is it getting worse, or are you leaving work and you can't stand your boss and you're noticing this? So although there's dietary interventions, we can try all of those, but if you're not finding progress and this client's really compliant, you have to start to think, like, what else are we missing here? So it's really important to look into that, and the more real they get with me, the more we can start to look into how we could fix that. So, I used to do one session by itself for somebody, but it's kind of like, as a practitioner, as you're training someone or working as a doctor, you come in one time and you don't really get the whole picture. You could kind of get a glimpse of their life, and you could give them some exercises, or I can give them some nutritional tips and say, okay, but until you really know them and start working and have them feel comfortable to, like, release with you, that's when I start seeing the real transformations. So
yeah, they don't let you look behind the curtain for a while.
No, because they don't even want to. They don't even want to be honest with themselves. You know what I mean? They don't even, like, believe what's really going on until they start having that truth. Almost like they have an epiphany, like, wow, I really see what I'm doing, and that needs to be resolved. So I try to help them to maybe find those things.
The entire traditional healthcare system is really built around people not sharing that kind of information. There's just not enough time for it in the traditional medical health insurance model. So people are showing up with all kinds of ailments related to their gut function and their aches and their pains and their headaches, and all of the things that we all know can really stem from some of these challenges with diet, nutrition, lifestyle. And if you don't uncover that, all you're going to do is get a prescription for the symptom that you showed up at the doctor's office with.
Completely.
So what we have to kind of teach people is you're responsible for that.
Right.
That your health insurance is not going to contribute to that. And they, working with somebody like yourself and making a decision to pay out of pocket is as important of a decision as knowing that your health insurance is not going to pay for your gym membership. They're not going to pay for your organic grocery bill. Right.
But I guess it's about prioritizing. Like, I live on the Upper East Side, and I look at these girls, and they're, like, wearing their Louboutins and Chanel bags, and they have money for that, and you're like, your life is so screwed up. Like, you're telling me you have, $5,000 to go invest in that, but you can't even invest in your life. And this is like your life, So I guess just to prioritize and think about what's really important. So yeah, maybe it's not covered, but I guess if you think about I don't really know any investment that's more important than your health. I mean, I've had my own health issues, hopefully, whoever's listening doesn't, but I'm sure they know someone who's going through this, and there's nothing more important than just feeling well.
Would you mind sharing with us some of your health challenges that you've had?
Sure. So, I was always in really good health growing up. I was very athletic, always played sports.
What sports did you play?
I played basketball through high school in Forest Hills.
Got it.
Yeah.
For the audience, Danielle's 5'11" maybe?
5'10".
5'10"?
Yeah.
I gave you an extra inch.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
5'11".
I ran.
Ben is a Jewish 5'8".
Me? Yeah. That's generous. But basketball, good. I'm sorry.
I wasn't that good though. Like, let me just say, like, I had a lot of endurance, but I wasn't the best player. But anyway, but yeah, so that, and I ran track, and then I always went to the gym. I started working out when I was 13. That was part of my whole phobia about getting sick because of my mother. So I was like always really dedicated to like take care of my body. And then after I was doing that for such a long time, and now I'm already a practitioner, and I've been doing my massage thing and my healing thing and my teaching yoga thing and working at like every fitness club. I mean, I worked at like Sport Club LA, Reebok, Equinox, Peninsula, Exhale, that I'm working with Dr. Morrison at this time, and I'm just going through insomnia, digestive issues, just not feeling well. I mean, like just a bunch of...
So that wasn't that long ago. That was like probably...
This is like going back about 9 years ago.
Okay.
When it first started happening, right?
Okay.
So I'm like, how does someone who does everything right deal with this, And I think, I got to the bottom of it. It turned out that it was thyroid cancer, and thank God that that's one of the best kind of cancers if you're going to get it. But the thyroid actually plays a major role in every function of your system, So if your thyroid's out of balance, your whole body's just out of whack. And, so I got to the bottom of it, and thank God I'm healthy and well right now. But I realized what it is to feel like crap, And sometimes as a practitioner, you see these kind of callous doctors or healthcare practitioners who work with you, and they don't know what it is to not have a good day, so it's hard for them to have empathy. And I think what it really taught me is just knowing, when people are feeling misunderstood, or maybe they've been to a bunch of doctors like what I did, and I kind of got dismissed, or it's all in your head, or maybe you're just stressed out or having boyfriend problems, or, you get this kind of brush off. And so I really try to listen to people and hear what they're going through, and doing a lot with nutrition has helped me. A lot of my, meditation practice has helped me, and just making adjustments in my life. I mean, I completely changed my life afterwards in terms of the way I work professionally, my hours, the way I work out. I mean, I gave myself a real break. I was a real type A personality prior to this all happening. I mean, I was like, people were like, you could be like a commander in like the Israeli army. Like, that's how disciplined I was. I would like work out at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'd work like a crazy day. I'd even go for a run at night. Like, I was insane.
Right.
And then I'm just like, I'm not going to stress my body so much. I'm not going to stress out my adrenals. I'm going to do things that are pleasurable in my life. I'm going to, like, it really opened me up to, like, what is important, what is wellness, what is it to like feel well, how, it taught me a lot.
It's so important as a woman to hear this, and I'm not a woman, but I do have daughters, and it's important because I have no experience with, I have 3 brothers, I have no sisters, and I think, I don't know, maybe 18 of 21 first cousins are all male, so, but I see this quite a bit where women are kind of forced in our society, especially in cities like New York and other metropolitan areas, where this type A personality is pervasive, and they are, it's 2 hours a day, 6 days a week in the gym, and
I think there is
more
a biological
exercise is
component.
better, and it's definitely,
I think so, because my
a
female athletes, as well as my female corporate clients that I've had, that consistently I have to tell them that they need to do less work, less volume of work.
Right.
Whereas with my male, I have to push them to do the amount that I want them to do. I mean, obviously there's outliers in both groups, but generally speaking, I would say, a perfect example is, you give a female athlete 6 sets of an exercise with a 2-minute rest period, and they want to rest 60 seconds. They don't want to rest for 2 minutes. Whereas the male athletes, they want to rest 3 minutes. They don't want to rest for 2 minutes. And that seems to be across the board. So yeah,
I see
it's
that
not
with clients too.
It's not unusual. Yeah, it's not unusual.
Let's not gloss over what we just heard over the last few minutes, however. So here you are, from the time you're 8 years old, paying attention to mental, physical, spiritual health, nutritional health. You get a diagnosis of cancer at a very young age.
Very young.
And and I can't help, I just had this conversation with one of my patients yesterday where there's this period that she went through of beating herself up for being so healthy. And actually, when you get the diagnosis, people around you will sit there and say, look, all that healthy living, all of that work, and look, she got cancer anyway.
Right. And
it's a very frustrating, difficult thing for people to go through. How did you deal with that?
You know, I think people could have said that, but I think on the other hand, I think recovering, feeling well, knowing how to listen to my body, even becoming more in tune with it. But I think I was a lot kinder to myself. You know, I think it's important to be your own best friend. It sounds so cheesy, but, like, it's true. I think people, you know, it is that whole New York, like, overachiever kind of mentality. And I think we really need to take a step back and not overwork ourselves. Our bodies are not meant to be so overworked. I mean, if you look at, like, the whole concept of blue zones. Are you familiar with blue zones? So
I've read a little bit
maybe
about
they weren't, but blue zones are. It was a concept that was brought upon, spoken about by Dan Buettner, who was a researcher, and he talked about these areas in the world that were these blue zones are basically people were the longest lived, and some of the common things that they had, or they ate well, but they also they had family, they had community, they did things that brought them pleasure. Maybe they walked a lot, or they worked in their gardens, or they're doing things that were more natural to the human body. And I think that a lot of these things are not natural. And as I get older, I want to do things that are more nourishing, that won't age me so much. Even from a level of health is one thing, but even aesthetically, I mean, I think that these women, they do so much, they go so crazy. It's not good for the way you age. Like, I think you want to be kind to your body and really, slow it down a bit. So I always think about nourishing rather than depleting. And that's where I stand now when it comes to taking care of myself. It's always nourishing. Yeah,
it's not spoken about enough. And you touched on two things. One is the component within your practice of utilizing food almost as a panacea, and to deal with more deeper underlying issues. And I think we're at a point in history where we've never had the ability to have access to so much food one time.
Yeah.
That it's such a new concept to people to think that can be used to kind of take care of emotional problems, whereas before it was like, all right, where am I going to get my next meal?
Right.
And it's interesting, in societies where they don't have access to that food, there's a lot less depression.
Well, it's depression, and people are also a lot longer lived. There's a big movement now to intermittent fasting and calorie restriction, and in other these underdeveloped countries where people actually eat less and less processed food, and people under the misconception that they think if it's so-called health food, or it's gluten-free, or it's non-GMO, or whatever buzzword you have, and it's bought in a health food store, that it's actually good for you and you can just overeat it. Our bodies are not meant to eat so much food, and you start to use up. You're born with a certain number of enzymes when you're born, and as you go through and you're eating so much and doing things, you're depleting your stores of enzymes, and basically to stay young, and also about telomeres and your DNA, and a lot of times calorie restriction can help to, not to shorten the telomeres. Yeah.
Dr. G just perked up. You just got him going now. He's going now.
No.
Let's go.
No, but from a research standpoint, the only thing that has been shown, the only one single intervention anyone can do that has been shown to increase longevity is calorie restriction.
Right.
And I believe the research done on it basically says a 24-hour fast once a week is one of the most effective methods of prolonging your life. And again, prolonging your life compared to where we're at now.
Right.
Who knows what the possibilities are. So, no, I agree 100%. I always say children grow and repair. Adults repair.
Right.
So we don't need the same habits and patterns of food consumption as a child does. Yet we all have this breakfast, lunch, dinner. And I see a lot of adults, a lot of grandmothers, they look at a pancake breakfast the same way they did when they were 8 years old. And your body cannot process that meal at 40, 50, 60 years old the way it did when you
dude,
were...
and we're in New York. I mean, you travel like I do. Like, you go to the middle of the country and you see some of the portions that we get served. And I'm a decent-sized eater. And I say to myself, oh, my God. Like, that's 4 meals.
Right.
That's not even 1 meal.
And the food is just so cheap and affordable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there were times when, you know, our ancestors or even just our grandparents, food was not necessarily that abundant. You know, you had to really pick and choose. And the things that we consider to be everywhere, like cakes and cookies and things like that, when my mother was growing up in her village, those were for major holidays. They didn't have the resources to have it dessert every night.
Exactly. I mean, I'm not a purist by any means. I don't tell people don't ever eat dessert or don't enjoy it. But I think if you can live a life where you have moderation and you eat small meals. I mean, I always go back to, I really love Maimonides. I don't know if you're familiar with Maimonides. Maimonides Hospital, right?
Yes, of
so
course.
he
Sure.
was,
Wasn't it an order of nuns?
No. It was a Jewish...
he was like, they call him the Rambam. He was like, he was
Sorry. Slider.
Well, you guys know something, right? But he was religious.
I'm in religion.
So there you go. He was a doctor and a rabbi.
Okay.
But, you know, a lot of his principles from, you know, I don't know, thousands of years ago, I don't remember the time of the Rambam, but I've been reading and how it relates to now, and he talks about these things of, you know, only eat till you're 70% full, and don't drink and eat at the same time, because it's, as far as digestion goes, you're diluting the food, except if you have wine with it, interestingly. I don't know why it digests okay. Once you have a meal, get up and walk a little bit, you know, don't and all these type of principles, and it really makes sense. But he also says that you could have a little bit of something sweet, or, you know, for a special occasion or a holiday, because that also is nourishing for the soul. You don't want, people go on these restrictive diets, which I don't believe in, and it's like you can't have anything, and then you can't just restrict, and then maybe from a health perspective, it's like, okay, well, I'm doing gluten-free and no sugar and this and that, whatever, and of course some people are celiac or they have a real intolerance, so I'm not knocking it. I'm pretty much gluten-free myself. But I will say that the emotional side of feeling joy and being able to be social and go out with friends, and you have
go
to
to an
enjoy
Italian
the
restaurant on Arthur Avenue in the Bronx, by the way.
Right.
Not in Queens, but in the Bronx.
Okay.
And you get an Italian meal there, like a pasta and their desserts, you know, the tiramisu. I mean,
in Queens, we have Spaghetti Park in Corona.
Oh, yeah.
But,
okay, I know that place.
You do have New Park Pizza.
Yeah.
It's the best pizzeria in the city. Hands down.
But I will tell you that the whole gluten-free thing, when you're eating food that traditionally has gluten and then it says gluten-free, it's probably the unhealthiest thing that you can do.
Oh, 100%.
It's cakes and cookies and pizza.
Lots of sugar.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to have something that... So sometimes people ask, you know, well, what if I have like Ezekiel whole grain goodness kind of bread? And my answer to that is, you're probably better off with a white flour French baguette, freshly baked this morning, that will be bad tomorrow, preferably sourdough. You have some pre-digested, bacteria breaking down the gluten molecules. There's no additives or preservatives to keep that bread soft for a couple of weeks on the shelf.
Yeah.
So
I'm with you on that.
Yeah. So I mean, we've gone way
Tip
overboard.
of the day, folks. Tip of the day. Write it down.
But so in your book, the Breaking Your Fat Girl Habits, which is an interesting title. Have you gotten any pushback on that title?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Could you do that today?
What's that?
Could you do the title like today, in today's climate?
I did it 2 years ago.
So
But it was a different time. 2 years ago was a different time.
I remember I was doing a promotion with it, combined with a makeup company, and they were, you know, they were putting it all over social media and when the products, and then you get, all the makeup, and then you get a copy of her book. And I remember the Instagram feeds. People were like, "What kind of freaking name is that?" Like, people were really upset.
Yeah.
And I said, you know,
fat shaming.
Yeah, but it's nothing to do with fat shaming. I mean, a lot of skinny girls have fat girl habits. Underneath, it's weight loss mistakes even healthy chicks make. And it's the kind of girls who think because things are gluten-free that you can just go crazy, or the ones that hang out at like the frozen yogurt places after they go to SoulCycle. It's like, really? You're going to have a 400-calorie, yogurt full of sugar after you just did this whole workout, or doing the acai bowl.
But it's fat-free.
It's fat-free, right? Or like these acai bowls that are like sugar bombs and throw off your blood sugar, or like juice cleansing for a week, and then you like, you
That's a big one. That's a big one because people don't know that, and I've said that to athletes and corporate clients. I'm like, a juice cleanse, it depends on what type of juice you're doing, what time of the day, and where your baseline is, where you're starting at. If you have blood sugar problems, that's not the thing for you.
But that, and then also issues with candida. I mean, I've had like girls come to me with like yeast infections after they do juice fast. People don't know what talks about this, and I'm like, well, of course, because you've been having pure sugar for a week. That's your problem. Also, even according to Chinese medicine, I mean, I've been seeing a natural Chinese doctor for almost 20 years, and everything has to do with yin and yang, so yin being the more feminine, the yang is masculine, but yin are more cooling foods, and juice is very yin, things that are cold, things that are ice, things that are good to be maybe taken in the summer, but you don't want to mess up your internal environment in the wintertime having cold juices, and then you want more yang things in the winter, maybe like root vegetables and soups and ginger and spices. So people are doing these juice fasts in the winter, and they're throwing off their body. It's really messed up.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have been writing quite a bit and looking at how we have not only a 24-hour circadian rhythm, we have a 4-season circadian rhythm. And the fact is, in this part of the world, fruit doesn't grow 12 months out of the year.
Right.
To sit there and eat fruit in February in New York doesn't make any sense genetically. And then taking that fruit and sticking it into some kind of juicer and extracting the juice from there.
Like, what are you getting out of that?
Right, you're getting some vitamins and minerals, but who cares? You can get vitamins and minerals from anywhere. You don't necessarily need that, and the sugar issue is, or the fructose issue is a bigger deal. Right,
so the bottom line is if you're going to have, instead of juicing, I'd say eat the vegetables, maybe lightly steamed to preserve some of the nutrients, or eat them raw. But even in the winter, I wouldn't do too many raw vegetables, honestly.
So weight loss is kind of a specialty of your practice?
Yeah.
Can you go over some of the strategies that you think work best, or is it really an individual thing? Is it something that...
Well, I mean, it can be an individual thing, but I see a lot of mistakes, and I know for myself, because people look at me and they think I'm naturally skinny and it was always easy. And when I first started in this industry, almost 20 years ago, and I was doing all the healing work, and I was a yoga teacher, and all that, and I felt like I had to be a vegan, right? So I would work these health expos. I learned this Hare Krishnas there, and I'd be learning how to cook from them, and so I was eating tons of...
Had to be on the team at the time.
Yeah, oh my
had
God.
to be on the team.
I could never be eating the sacred cow. Are you kidding me? So I would, be eating tons of, brown rice and these bowl. Remember one bowl called the Planet Platter? I love this thing. I would go to this health food place called Angelica's downtown. It was a big thing of brown rice, and it had beans and seaweed and tofu, but it was huge, and then I would maybe have my green juices all day long, and then maybe a smoothie, and then I'd have the gluten-free thing wasn't so known, but I've had a wheat-free cookie. I didn't do any wheat or any yeast back then. So I'd have a big dense wheat-free cookie, and then I'd have soy milk. So it's all these things I screw myself up. Soy, which is no good for me. I was doing way too much juicing, which was throwing off my blood sugar. I was doing way too many carbs. I didn't burn them off. They turned to sugar, stored as fat. I felt like crap. I was almost 25 pounds heavier. I had muscle tone underneath my fat. I worked out twice a day, 20 yoga classes a week. And
20 yoga classes a week.
And did massages, and I was in the worst shape of my life. I should have been ripped. So basically, all of the things that I find people doing now, who are posting on Instagram of how great their habits are, and I just smile to myself. I'm like, wow, those are my mistakes. If I want to gain weight, I do that. So literally, if I have a girl that comes to me and she's too skinny, if I want to make her gain weight, I put her on big portions of brown rice. I put her on big portions of quinoa. I tell her to do the smoothies and the acai bowls, exactly the opposite. So I think that I find a lot of that. My clientele is not people who eat burger and fries. They're a lot more intelligent than that, but they overeat health foods. It's portions, overeating health foods is the biggest problem I see.
And I encourage our listeners to go to Danielle's Instagram and search for her before and afters, because you'll go to her website and say, oh, another skinny girl telling me what to do. Well, she's got a before and after that's quite shocking.
Right, and she's not skinny, she's lean. Yeah. And something that you glossed over just a little bit, which was basically how your story made you more empathetic. Your history made you more empathetic. I find that the best practitioners that I've met in my career, they all have a personal story that kind of flipped the light switch, including Dr. G. He's spoken about it on the podcast.
I need to learn more about Dr. G's story.
Yeah, we're gonna put him on the spot since his phone just went off, and basically makes you more empathetic. And me personally, I know when I had my knee surgery, the only positive that came out of that was that when I was doing rehab work with the athletes, I got it.
Right.
I knew exactly where they were at emotionally, and I knew exactly where I needed to take them in order for it to be a positive experience for us to get better results.
Well, that's where like the spiritual part comes in, you know, not to sound like you were talking about saying woo-woo before, but you know, if you think about what you're meant to do, and if you think about maybe some kind of challenge that you had to struggle with, but if you take that and you use it for the good, and you realize that you can kind of turn that and really make an impact in people's lives, and you can see things differently. It's almost like you have like an X-ray vision to noticing things that other people wouldn't, because you see yourself in that client. So having going through that experience, I mean, I actually say thank you for it a lot, because I feel like it's really helped me. And also, no one likes to feel like hopeless or like they're crazy, or maybe they've been to other practitioners and they've been dismissed. And when, you know, I feel like I'm not dismissive to certain things, because I know how much it sucks to be in that position, and I don't believe anyone is destined to just kind of be where they are and not have improvement. So
yeah, I mean, with your family history and both you and your mother having a form of cancer in your 30s,
right,
is something that a lot of people say, you know, they'll kind of throw their hands up in the air and say, you know, it was destiny, it was genetics. But one of the things I've always said to my patients is you live long enough, life is going to happen. You're going to have great times, you're going to have bad times.
Yeah.
You're going to have, you know, loss, you're going to have death in the family, you're going to have, you know, you can get hit by a truck, you can have cancer. Things do happen, and it's your pre-existing state of health that will determine how well you adapt to that thing when it happens. And so it's not that the healthy living necessarily is going to prevent the bad thing from happening to you, even if that's cancer. But if you're going to get cancer, you better be ready for it. Right?
But even, you know, even if it's not cancer, I mean, like we said that, but just even if it's, you know, going through something that's very tragic, like a divorce or a loss or something, and let's say you know, you don't take care of your heart and you have cardiovascular issues, or you haven't taken care of yourself so far, something like that can just set you off, that your health can just spiral and you end up in the hospital. But if you have everything else at least somewhat working for you, you can better adapt in that way. Because you're right, everyone's going to have some kind of trauma or something that's going to hit them. No one is immune to life happening.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's just how you deal with it and how you bounce back, exactly like what you said.
Yeah, and genetics are the cards that you're dealt, but we know that the environment you put your body in will determine how your genes express themselves.
Right. So. Epigenetics. I mean, it's like everyone's talking about it, but it really is so true. You know, you are not your genetics. I mean, if you look at my family and how they've aged and their health, and I mean, I'm not really close to them, to be honest, but I've just seen from a distance. You know, Facebook's so interesting. You can kind of see what's going on. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I feel like really where I am right now is due to just taking care of myself. It's definitely not by chance by any means, and it's work. I mean, every day you have to put the effort in, and there's a number of things. It's taking care of yourself, you know, with food, or maybe moving, having some spirituality, you know, prayer if that's your thing, mm-hmm. or, you know, all that stuff really matters. And
we live in a very unnatural city. I mean, trying to stay healthy in New York City is not as easy as being in, let's say, Park City, Utah. I say Park City because it's one of my favorite places.
It's a beautiful place. Trying to stay mindful, which is what you alluded to when you said, you know, trying to be more better to yourself, and basically, I mean, it's an overused term, but just trying to be in the moment and be grateful for the moment is something that's really difficult to do in this city, because stuff is coming at you. It feels like, you know, I often use the analogy, it feels like I'm in a pinball machine, an old-fashioned pinball machine.
I can see that.
And, you know, it's like, okay, how do I turn this thing off for a little while? And it's almost impossible unless you really focus on it. And we're fortunate that we grew up here, so we have a different mindset than someone who's moved here, for sure.
Right.
Like I'm with people that have moved here, and they have a hard time crossing the street.
It's funny. One of the things that I enjoy the most about this city, you know how sometimes you put yourself in an environment that's challenging, whether it be hiking or climbing a mountain or something like that, you feel alive, right? Because you kind of put yourself in a situation where what's going to happen is not really well known, but I actually get the same exact feeling when I'm driving in this city. I never take public transportation. I only drive in Manhattan, and I love it. I mean, you've seen me.
I know.
Wow.
You love it, yeah.
It's something, I get into a zone, like that experience that athletes have about being in a zone.
Yeah.
I should have been a cab driver. If I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, I think I'd become a cab driver.
Best conversation on driving the city. I have a colleague, and I picked him up at the airport. This was 15 years ago when he flew here to do some work with me, and we drove from the airport, from JFK, and I was living in East Harlem at the time. And he looked at me, he turned to me and said, "This is NASCAR. Like, this is unbelievable." You know, Canadian guy from the country, and he was like, I can't believe that you guys do this every day. And I said, yeah.
Yeah, and then you go to some of these cities around the world where there's traffic lights mean nothing, laws mean nothing. Gets even better.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I'm a baby. I don't even drive here, but I have a license. I'm scared to use it. Whatever. Take Uber, okay.
But you don't have
yes,
to now.
the Uberization of the world is definitely
exactly.
And soon we're going to have anyway, let's get back to the topic at hand. Thriving. So we talked about your personal story. We talked about your academic life as far as it relates to the books that you've written and what you specialize in. Tell us a little bit about what it takes to be successful in practice. And you kind of have to be a little bit of an entrepreneur in order to put books out there and to get to be able to get on television the way you have in the past. So what are some of the...
And I'm going to throw it out there in a male-dominated field.
Absolutely.
Because it still is predominantly male-dominated. So it's much harder, I think, for a woman to break through and thrive in this field.
It's very saturated, too, you know. I have to say, I think a lot of it is the passion I have for it. I don't know, I mean... I wish I could say there's a magic formula, or I'm out there, like, you know, posting all day or really using my social media or networking. To be honest with you, I'm really bad at going out and being social. I could be a lot better, and I think that would probably help me more. But I think when I speak to people, I think they feel the sincerity and, like, what it is that I do. And I think that resonates, you know, and if people feel like you're helping them, rather than coming from a sense of marketing, like, come and check me out, I think when people really feel well and they want to share it with other people, it's been a lot of word of mouth for me, more than much else. I mean, I've never had a publicist before or done anything like that.
Authenticity seems to be the...
I think so. You know,
I
think it's the power of intention. I think it's true for everything.
It really is, you know, when you think about coming from a place, like if we all have something that's like, it feels like our mission to be here, you know, and for me, this is what it really feels like. I know a lot of people who hate to go to work. They're so stressed. Sunday nights, they start having panic attacks, you know. That was me years ago. I used to feel like that, and, you know, I feel like now I don't separate myself from what I do professionally to who I am. You know, I represent myself as the same person, you know, like I'm Danielle, like the wellness person, like whether I'm at a party or with friends, like I can talk about this stuff, you know, like even like to anyone, and it's never a burden. I never feel like, oh man, I'm not getting paid for it. Like I don't want to do this. So I think because I love it, it just sort of it flows and in a really natural kind of way. And I hope to be doing this kind of work the rest of my life. Even if I was like, you know, a billionaire, like literally, I still would be doing this. And I think that's the thing that people should strive for, is to find something that really makes them happy. You know, not like having the best part of your work day is your lunch break, because I don't even take a lunch. You know, like like I want to work. I'm excited when I have a lot of stuff.
You have passion for it.
Yeah.
So passion
and I know
intent.
you guys are too, because you know you're doing something that's really helping people, and it's like your life's purpose. So I feel like there's no accidents, and having gone through this, with whatever, my mother, and then having my own situations, and I feel like it can only help you to be better at what you're doing, and so that's just my goal for the rest of my life. I feel like I want to be able to work with people and help them, and keep doing this stuff.
So that kind of leads me to, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? It's obviously, it seems like you're still going to be working with clients.
Unless she's a billionaire, and I don't believe that. That's bullshit.
But where do you see yourself as far? Do you have other books in mind? Do you have other ways of reaching out to people?
I think more speaking is really something I should be focusing on. Every time I get up and I do a lecture, I really enjoy it, and I just haven't pursued that as much. But I think that's something I'd like to do more. And also, I'm transitioning a lot also to doing a lot of remote clients where I'm getting to do a lot, whether it's Skype or whether it's by phone, because, you want to be able to have more access, and I feel like there's so many, like, I'm already reaching out to people outside of New York, quite a few, but I would like to even do more of that, so maybe some more flexibility that I can just really do this from anywhere all the time, and then just continue it till I get really, really old and I have no energy anymore.
Right.
I've been doing virtual work for quite a few years now, and I will tell you, you mentioned before that the market is kind of saturated, and I will disagree 1,000% because there is a great need for a lot more people like us, and I think in the future it would probably be wonderful to help train more people to do what we do, because there are cities in this country. I mean, New York City is a wonderful place, and there's no shortage of people who think and work the way that we do.
Yeah, but we're in a bubble here.
Between New York and Los Angeles, there's a whole country desperate for
that is
our
really
message.
true. That is true.
Yeah, I like the idea of what you both do virtually, because I think you can touch a lot more people that way that are going to look out for your specialty.
What's amazing is that, Ben, you're now reaching out with Eldoa virtually, and it's going very well. It's something that you didn't even think could be possible, and you're seeing pretty dramatic changes in some of your clients. So
yeah, I'm doing a lot of what I call regenerative, recuperative work, which includes a lot of myofascial stretching, Eldoa, some segmental type training that I don't have to physically be there with the client, but that I can
give the cues,
monitor and supervise them and give the cues. And I'm also moving into more of a VR component as well. But I think that there's a huge demand globally for the knowledge that that Danielle and yourself are bringing to the table.
And Danielle, you work one-on-one with clients, but again, it's this idea that if you want to impact more and more people, working not necessarily only one-on-one, but one-on-many, and finding opportunities for that is important, and that's where speaking comes in. That's where the internet really comes in, technology.
What sounds a huge alarm for me talking to Danielle now is the speaking. I don't know, intuitively I'm just like, that's where you need to be, because your story can impact a lot of people. And it comes from the heart when you're talking about it and you're passionate about it. And
Thank you.
And it's something that I'm sure at a certain point with every private client that you work with, you get to that point where you tell them the story, but you're only touching one person at a time.
That is true. That is true. And anytime I do speaking, I always feel like it does go over well, and I'm always happy that I did it. And I guess that is maybe more of the next step, focusing a bit more on that.
That'd be great.
Well,
I'd go see you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Thank you for the inspiration. I guess now I'm hearing what I need to be doing.
Well, we all need to bounce it off each other.
So now the first book that you wrote,
Right.
Meeting Challenges with Smiles.
Smile at your challenges.
Smile at your
but
challenges.
I like how you said it.
What's the basic premise there? I think you had mentioned earlier when we were talking that it's more of a spiritual component.
Right. So the thing is that you can be super calculated about every way that you want to plan your life. And the subtitle is, it takes more than just going gluten-free, drinking green juice, and practicing yoga to solve your problems. And I think that people want to snap their fingers and not really deal with the issue that they have, but they think if they take on a new fad, I'm going to start working out, or I'm just going, I'm going to go do a cleanse, or I'm going to do, and it's okay, and it's actually encouraged to go maybe do something like that. But I think also it's about your coping and a way that to realize that sometimes life is just unfair, and you may sometimes, even with doing everything the right way, you may still get hit, and that's just part of our growth. And it could actually, if handled the right way, it could actually help us to be a better person. But when I say smile at your challenges, it's really kind of like saying, okay, like, bring it on. Like, I know there's a reason this is happening to me, and it's really hard to say it when you're going through it. But if you can just sort of weather that moment and be able to say that this is not going to kill me, hope it doesn't kill me, but you really, really, really have some faith and conviction that this is really to help you to get to the next level, because all of us are just trying to get to the next level, then it's really going to, like, up your game, and no matter what you decide to do. So when I say smile at your challenges, I guess it's sort of like this, I almost did have an inner smile about it, knowing, like, okay, this has got me, but it's not totally defeated me, and let's see what the next step is now that I've kind of hit this, like, where's this challenge going to bring me? And I think if people can do that, I mean, it's a lot easier said than done, but it's just knowing that we all have our pain, and and it's just how we deal with it's really going to impact our health overall, and I just think that I really grew a lot from smiling at my challenges and still trying to. And actually, I mean, I have times that I fall, let me tell you, because we're all human.
Yeah,
of course we are.
There's times I reread my own book, okay?
That's right. You can't beat yourself up.
Yeah, I mean, nope. I went through something recently, and I was very upset about it, and I said, wait a second, and because that's just who we are. Even the best of us. I'm sure even Tony Robbins has his days where he's like, dude, like, what the hell?
Especially him with that lifestyle, for sure.
I mean, everyone has a breakdown. No one is perfect. And I've learned that a lot from just clients that I work with. Someone, it's interesting. People come into my office, and I'm like, I'll see them, and they're like, good looking and rich and this and that. And I already know that no one is 100% blessed. Everyone has an area where it's their test in this life. And I'll be like, I wonder where their challenge is. That's the first thing that comes to me. I never get, like, jealous of people at this point, because you never know what happens behind closed doors.
Yeah, you don't. There's a proverb, right, or a short story about a guy who walks into his rabbi and says, basically, look, he starts complaining, and the rabbi's just listening, and he's like, okay, open that closet door over there. He goes, I'm going to throw you a bag. I want you to put all your problems in this sack. He goes, open that closet door. There's a bunch of hooks with a bunch of other sacks on there. Hang yours up and take one of the other ones.
Right.
And the dude is like, no thanks. I'm not going that route.
I'll take the problems I know than the problems I don't know.
So that's one component of it. And then the other component is, I've heard on several other podcasts a few experts in the field of evolutionary biology and psychology. In the world that we're living in now, is like everybody's so sensitive. I think we've forgotten that you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
That's really true. Yes.
Whether it comes to exercise or being strict about a certain nutritional regimen, or about your work, or about your academic career, or about your relationship, you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, because life is an undulating curve. It's not like a linear shot to happiness or success.
Right.
It's filled with challenges, and if you're not challenged and you don't deal with it the right way, then that's where you fall, and that's where you fall hard. So I think that what you're saying is 1,000% true.
And, not trying to be so perfect. I think we feel like if we try to stick to something and we don't stick to it 100%, then we start feeling, mad at ourselves, or we feel like we don't want to continue because we're taking on too much at one time. So I think just really, don't be so hard on yourself. Try to do the best that you can, and know that everyone falls, and that's okay,
Tell us about this concept that I read on your website about orthorexia.
So orthorexia was a term that was coined by this doctor named Steve Bratman, and basically it's an unhealthy obsession with healthy eating, and I think it's a really big problem we're seeing now. It's like the new anorexia. So basically, people are so into eating healthy where they're so rigid. It's like that they almost isolate themselves from, I feel like, from everyday living, meaning that they may not eat, whether it's gluten or sugar, or they won't have meat, or they won't have whatever it is that's their poison or something that they're afraid of. It's like food has become demonized, and I don't think that it's really healthy, or it's really making them, to live better, or prevent them from any kind of illness. Actually, that was my whole thing. I was a bit of an orthorexic in the past, and if that was insurance against getting sick, well, guess what? It didn't necessarily work, because that rigidity and that stress and that is going to make you sick.
Sure.
So it may not, you may not get sick through food, but you're going to get sick through your behaviors.
It's the same in the gym. I see it in the gym. I see guys that are so anal and rigid about their programs that they get to a point where they don't enjoy their workouts. And it's like, you go and I'm like, dude, I love to train. Like, sometimes I'll just go in and have fun. You're a guy. Sometimes you go in and you just want to train arms.
Right.
And you just want to have a fun workout.
Well, you
just want to skip
light
rope.
Attitude. I mean, you have to have lightness in your life. And I think orthorexia is very much a rigidity. It's like, I kind of make the comparison to someone who maybe was an alcoholic and now they're sober. And now they walk around judging everyone who drinks, even socially. Because it's like, dude, you were like an alcoholic last year. Like, you couldn't keep your shit together. And now it's like, you're judging other people. And people who are orthorexics kind of do that. I mean,
I'm seeing communities of that. So, like, specifically like in CrossFit and some of these other fitness communities where it's like, it's so rigid.
It's so rigid. I mean, I should be posting more on Instagram, but sometimes I get so annoyed just looking at these posts all day with people's, like, what they think they're, like, these self-proclaimed, like, elitists. Like, I can't, I'm just
meal
like...
prep. If I see the word meal prep...
I can't deal. I cannot deal.
Shut up.
Yeah.
When our children were younger, we went through we decided we were going to raise our family gluten-free. And so we went through that process, and we felt, especially with some of the blood testing that we did and some of my health history and my family, that it would be a good idea. It's not a matter of if you're going to be have an issue. It was really genetically a matter of when. And so we went through that process, and we kind of did it early enough with our children that they didn't really know any different. So they learned how to self-police at birthday parties, and it was really impressive to see my three kids go through that process. And now that they're teenagers and going into high school, and I told my oldest and my son, my middle child, I said, look, you're a big boy now. You're a big girl. If you choose to be gluten-free, fine. But it's your choice. I'm not chasing you around. No one's going to chase you around, and you shouldn't have any guilt. Make a decision on what you want to do. And my son basically said, all right, well, I'm going to go into the gluten world a little bit. And my daughter is, she wants to stay gluten-free, and I don't know how good they are about it, but it's their thing. I gave them that freedom to not... It's kind of like... when we were kids growing up in Queens and people would, they would hide that they smoked in front of their parents. Now we got kids hiding the gluten from their parents.
Right.
So we didn't want to create that orthorexic kind of environment for our children.
Right. Well, also, what you decide to do for yourself as a personal preference is one thing, but don't make other people feel judged about it. I really find that annoying, and I just feel like don't try to be a pusher. Just let everyone be as healthy as they can, but don't try to spread that. So.
Yeah, the judgment is a big factor.
Yeah.
Gluten,
especially online.
Gluten is the evil weed.
Yeah. Listen. I've had some autoimmune stuff, so I know, and I feel a difference when I have a lot of it and digestive issues. So I do try to avoid it.
Sure.
But even just beyond gluten, just the the craziness about
a lot of the issue seems to be everything that surrounds the gluten. Gluten tends to be kind of a weak lectin, a weak type of a immune a protein, but it seems that if you combine it with some of the changes that we have genetically in the genetically modified foods, or if you combine the gluten with pesticides, then it becomes a bigger issue. So is it really the gluten, or is it everything that surrounds it?
Right.
Yeah, I tell everybody the same story. Back in 2005, working with a colleague with U.S. With U.S. Track and Field, actually. We would go to Texas where they were training at Austin. And so the Jamaican team was training there as well. And these are like elite, the world's elite athletes. But what was interesting was looking at nutritional practices and looking at the emotional connectivity to those nutritional practices. Whereas the American track and field athletes were super anal about every single morsel of food they put in, the Jamaican athletes were like, what did you eat today? Well, I woke up after 12 hours of sleep, and I had tea and toast, and then trained for 3 hours, and then I'll have maybe like a small meal.
No Jamaican patties?
Yeah, well, they would party and, and eat whatever they wanted, and then some of the female athletes were like, oh yeah, I had a Cinnabon this morning, and I had a glass of chocolate milk, and then train. And I thought, oh my God. I mean, obviously genetics are involved, but their emotional attitude towards the food they were eating made a huge difference because they didn't feel like, oh, it doesn't affect me. I'm okay.
Yeah,
I'm going to go out and crush.
This is a really important topic that we're touching on here because really if the emotional attachment that we have to food as it relates to holidays, birthdays, our culture, where we come from. I always say that if you take somebody who's from the Caribbean and move them to Toronto and give them a Caribbean diet in Toronto, they might be obese, type 2 diabetic, and have heart disease. You take that same person and raise them in the Caribbean on a Caribbean diet, they might be just fine. Right? So it's a matter of, having that understanding with our patients and with our clients and saying, how can we best put your body in an environment where it can thrive and at the same time not create an orthorexic kind of environment.
Very true.
Yeah. Right. A little bit of being disciplined, just enough, but not to take you over the edge.
So what are some of your exercise practices for yourself?
So, I spent many years doing Ashtanga yoga super early in the morning, 5:30 in the morning, and I'd maybe even run at night. And now I'm almost embarrassed to say, but I'm very laid back with my exercise. So our office is, I work with Oz Garcia on the Upper West Side, and I live on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. So I walk to work, which is walking through Central Park. It's about 35 minutes each way. And then I'll get home after work, or I'll do, if I have time in the morning, if I'm not rushing, I'll do a self-yoga practice for anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes, but it's like stretching and doing my yoga, my sun salutations, and and then maybe twice a week I'll do some weight training, maybe a little bit of biking, but I'm not super regimented. It really goes day to day. I don't plan it too much, other than I know my body wants to do something every day, so I sort of go with how it feels. But I used to be really crazy about my workouts. I hope I'm not offending you, Ben, because I know
it's interesting.
You're definitely. I'm sure you have more of a regimen with your clients, and I think that's good to have that for some people who don't have the discipline. But for me, I just feel like I don't feel well if I don't move. It's even if I'm like run down, I still do something. The yoga for me always is, we talked about like depleting or energizing. For me, it's always energizing. So even if I feel not well, like just moving just gives me that energy. So I have to do that.
It's important to focus on those points you made. One is that your exercise regimen is not for a specific goal. So it's important that the listeners, if tomorrow you said, hey, Ben, I want to do, I don't know, a Tough Mudder, or I want to do this, then you have a goal, and so it changes. So it needs to be more regimented. It needs to be more periodized. It needs to be more prescribed. But when it's for wellness, you hit it right on the head. I think movement and consistency and how it makes you feel, those are the three most important components.
And counting a long walk in your regimen is important. We count that as exercise because...
Of course.
Matter of fact, I think there's too many people, if you were to break down the heart rate zones into the 5 zones and, the high-intensity interval training class that people take, whatever the class is, keeps them in, like, zone 3. But there's not enough attention paid to zone 1 and 2. And that's the long, brisk walk. That's where your heart rate gets to like 110, 120, but sustained and consistent for 40 minutes. And then getting into zone 4 and 5 on the super high intensity side for short bursts.
Right, like for 2 days a week I do more high intensity, but also if I want to add to it, which sounds kind of funny, but I love Trader Joe's. I do a lot of my food shopping there. It happens to be on the Upper West Side. I'm probably the only crazy person that will go to Trader Joe's, and I'll have my bags of groceries and
carry them home on the
Upper East Side. I do it a lot. Or I'll go downtown to do my shopping. I kind of make an activity out of it.
Right.
So it's like I'm getting my exercise, and that's like my idea of like going back to nature. It's like carrying my food to the field through Central Park and getting home. For our listeners, Central Park, I'll put Central Park against any park in the country. Hands down. Oh, it's so awesome. It's like you have grass beautiful. And you breathe the I don't know how fresh the air is, but I guess it's fresher than the street air, and and it's like I feel so lucky that I'm able to that's my commute. Yeah. I mean, how awesome is that?
If you live in the city, if you live in any city, there's no city like New York City. I mean,
we're pretty green though too, weren't we?
down.
Like voted like top 3.
Yeah, I mean, we walk
per
more.
capita?
We walk more than any other major city. We have less obesity than any other major city. So there's just think about the hustle and bustle and the subway and the stairs you climb, and there's just more physical activity than cities like Dallas, where everyone's in a car.
Florida. Oh yeah, it's so funny. Like I'll go to LA sometimes. I'll stay in a hotel and I'll be like, "Where's your nearest Whole Foods or this and that?" And they're like, "Well, it's a mile and a half, 2 miles." And then they try to tell me how to. And I'm like, "Oh, I'll just walk there." And like I'm literally walking on the side of the highway, like, and because I enjoy that activity, but like I know I've looked like a crazy person a couple times. Even I have relatives in Florida, and like I'll go down there and I will walk instead of taking a car to like go run an errand or get my nails done, and I will literally walk a mile and a half, 2 miles like on the side of the road, and they're like, "Why are you doing that?" I'm like, "Because I can't sit still all day. Like I have to do that."
That's funny. Didn't you feel like you were on the moon? I felt that way.
It's so weird. The only people you see are like maybe homeless people or like people, like it's kind of weird, kind of walking around.
I went to the Dominican Republic a month ago, and I had to go. I had to get something, and the guy says, "Yeah, it's about a half a mile away." And I said, "Great." He goes, "Do you want me to call you a taxi?" I'm like, "A taxi? Are you out of your mind? Are there no sidewalks?" He's like, "No, there's sidewalks, but we don't walk here." I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm not from here, so I'll be walking." And yeah,
it's funny. It's funny you bring up the Dominican Republic, because the few times I've been there, the cities have the same problems we have: obesity, diabetes, heart disease. You go into the countryside and you see some dude walking down the mountain, walking back up. He's like 140 years old.
Right.
And it's just so they're in the countryside, the medical issues they have more to do with trauma and falls and things like that, whereas in the city they have more of our problems. So it's a really unique kind of place. It's a kind of a third world environment, and you see that people who live as poor as they are, they got the chickens running around, that's lunch.
Puerto Rico's the same way.
The avocados are on the tree, and you really learn a lot about health, and you see that people live long, kind of like the blue zones.
Right, even I lived in Chinatown a bunch of years ago before it started becoming trendy. I used to do yoga in Soho so early every morning that I wanted to live close by, but I couldn't afford Soho when I was like 20 years old. So I moved to Chinatown, and it was like really sketchy back then. Lived on top of a fish market. But I remember
my God,
it was
on top
like
of a fish
so
market
smelly.
in Chinatown?
Like I
A lot of
think
cats.
I think